today. I don't have any inks and I don't have too many stamps today, so it's going to be a bit of a different card, but I thought I'd pop on and just show you a few different techniques and create this card in the process. Okay, we've got enough people. Let's carry on. Okay, so I've used the new Mandala stamps this week. These came through the post. It was either late Friday or first thing Monday morning, so obviously I had to have a play with them. It's the first time that they'd come through to me, so I'm playing catch up. And for those who haven't seen them before, there's actually 3 sets of mandalas that match very closely to the stencils that Lisa brought out also. So these are A5 sets of stamps. We have 2 really good size stamps on each of the sets, 2 really good size mandalas on each of the sets. One being half a mandala, so I'm sure, I haven't actually tried this yet, but I've looked at what other people have, the other design team members have done. You can actually match up this free edge here to complete the whole mandala, and we have the coordinating ones, and these little sections fit within the smaller rosettes as well. So that system works over all 3 sets of the mandalas. So I can't wait to have a play with all of these. I've used this set today, but I'm sure over the coming weeks I'll have a good old play with these and come up with designs for these. Actually, I've just noticed on this one you've got little leaf sections on there as well, which is quite intriguing. Okay, so I look forward to playing with those. The other set also that came through to me at the same time was this Just Saying collection, the bold words. This is another A5 set of stamps with all these great sentiments on, but what's actually quite different about these stamps is when you stamp these out, as you can see here, and then cut them out, they actually look like they've been die cut, and because of the thicker border that we can actually stamp, it makes these really easy to cut. So these are actually really great, and I think these might be a new favourite of mine. I've teamed it here with the some of the ticker phrases, but I've just put this on plain onto this card, but the possibility to colour these, even doodle in amongst them, is actually really great, so I'm really excited about playing with those. But what I wanted to show you today is, hopefully, oh yes, you can see this in the design. I've used the flags as well also. These are Lisa's flags. I'll show you the dies in a second. But if you can look in the background here, I've actually used a plain grey card, and I've used just a clear embossing ink to watermark stamp onto the background here. It creates a really lovely subtle pattern in the background that coordinates with the rest of the design. And, excuse me, and also if I just tilt this slightly, you'll see that these mandalas have actually got a glazed, shiny finish to them. I'm just waiting for my video to catch up just to make sure that you can see that, the glaze. Oh yeah, there you go, you can see the glaze. Again, here I've used embossing ink, the clear embossing ink, and clear embossing powder to create like a glazed effect, so almost a tiled effect. So I'll show you how we got that too. Okay, so the background flags here are from the nested banners, and this is this set here. It comes with the 2 different shapes, so you have the fishtail shape, the double fishtail shape here, and then you have the one with the rounded end as well. These are actually still in stock on Lisa's website, thatcraftplace.co.uk. I did check that. Although the nested flags aren't in stock at the moment, these are, so these are a really good alternative. You get 3 sizes. You get 3 sizes of the longer one. You get 4 sizes of this one here, and the smallest size are actually great to put sentiments on and things, you see, so it's a really good size. And then obviously the larger ones you can add whatever embellishments. I'm going to be using the middle-sized version of the double-ended fishtail here. I really like using these two because the attention to detail, because we've got the stitching detail in there, which really finishes off the die cut really nicely. So I'm going to be using a slightly different colourway, although I shall stick with the, let's just put that here, I shall stick with the grey banners in the background. I've already die cut two, so I'm just going to die cut the third one. And if Dawn's watching, I know she's a fan of this little die cutting machine, and I'll just show you how well that these die cut through this machine also. The majority of the dies that I tend to use the most from Lisa all fit through this, which is absolutely perfect, which means I don't need to stand up. Sounds quite lazy, I know, but if things aren't within reaching, you know, within reach on my desk, my craft desks, I tend not to use them. So we do have to run this through twice, but I think that's a small price to pay. It works really well. So we just run that through. Run that through once, and then all we'll do, we'll just move that down slightly so the other end is attached with the washi tape, and we'll just cut through that other end there. You can see how easy it is just to move this, and the tiny little plates as well. I mean, it's so cute. To me, actually, that size of die cutter is a game changer when it comes to using Lisa's dies. It really is. You can see that pops out perfectly, and we have our three banners. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to stamp onto the background of these. The alternative way is that you just take the square piece of card that you want to use, you stamp on it first, and then you die cut afterwards. It's 6 2/3 really. It really is just preference on how you like to work, and also sometimes the idea comes to you beforehand. I'd already had these cut, so that's why I sort of stamp on them when they're already die cut. Right, as I say, I'm going to be using this Mandala stamp set. This is the Choose Happy set, and this is, say, defined by the words and the accessories that come with this stamp set. I'll be using a clear embossing ink pad. The one I'm using is the Nouveau one, but the Versamark will work for this technique, and also there's a couple of other clear embossing inks, and the Perfect Medium one will work also, but that's slightly stickier and you will need to let that dry for longer. This one works in just the same way as the Versamark. So I'm going to use a couple of the stamps. I'm going to use the smallest one and the middle-sized one here, just to give a variation. Now I wanted a pattern on this background. I didn't want to emboss this with clear embossing powder because I wanted it to be more subtle. I wanted the embossing and the mandalas to stand out more. So it's something I actually forget to use that often. You tend to use the clear embossing ink just to put embossing powder over the top, but the first ink pads that came out like this, like the Versamark, this is what actually it's designed for, and it's actually labelled as a watermark ink, I think. So all we do, we just ink up our stamps in the same way, and I always find taking the ink pad to the stamp and stamping this way around gives you a much more even and much more controlled application of ink onto the stamp. Now, the way I want to do this, I've actually stacked the die cuts together because I want to have some continuity of the pattern going across the different die cuts as I separate them. You don't have to do it like this. Again, this is just my preference. I quite like to see the the relationship of the pattern as it spreads across the different die cuts. So we give that a good press down, and hopefully you can see as I take that stamp away, just let that video catch up a little bit, you can actually see the impression there. Now this is, well, you can just about, oh yeah, you can just about see that. Once I've finished stamping, I'll lift that up so you can see that more. Now, as this ink dries, it will actually slightly intensify in colour a little bit, but basically you're giving this background a tone-on-tone pattern. This will actually work on top of most colours. Obviously white and cream less so because it's so light, but any sort of colour, pinks and blues, greys, greens, this works really, really well. And normally at this stage you would add your embossing powder, but all we do is just treating this like we would do any other ink, and we just allow that to dry. Fortunately, it's not like a very wet ink like some pigment inks could be, so it won't necessarily smudge, which makes it quite nice to work with as well. I think it's basically like a sticky ink. It's not an ink as such, obviously, because we've got no colour and no pigment into it. And you can hear that when you pull the stamp away, you can hear like this stickiness. I think it's got a lot of glycerin in these pads. There we are. You can see this is building up a really nice pattern. All you want to do is just integrate, or alternate, sorry, between the medium and the smaller stamp, or whichever design sort of suits you. I think this is really nice for backgrounds, and it's a really nice way to just add a little bit of interest to card blanks in the background as well. If you think just the plainness of a card blank is just a little bit too plain, but you don't want anything just to detract from the main design of your card, this is a really nice alternative. I think it's really, really elegant, and I love it on the grey. Now also I'm stamping off the page a little bit as well, so that makes that look nice and random. We'll just fill up all the areas there. We'll probably put just one more here. There we are. Now if I hold this up, you can just about sort of see that where you are. If I hold that up, then hopefully you can start seeing that pattern there. Let's just wait for that camera to catch up a little bit. There we are. Can you see that? Oh yes, you can see that. You can see that faintly in the background there. Again, that would look really elegant if you did put clear embossing powder on that, or white. But for these purposes, I think I'll just leave that as it is. Now what I will do, while I've got this ink out, I will just show you how well it works on other colours. Now obviously you could take a grey tone ink pad if you wanted it more vibrant, or even a pink tone ink pad to match these. But this really does just give a really nice subtle background. If I just show you on these two colours the effect that it gives, it just makes this one ink pad really versatile, and the more jobs that we can give to each of our items, our stash we've got in our stash, the better. I think we get so much, better value for money for that. So if I just lift that up again, you can see that we've got exactly the same effect there, the tone on tone. I think that's just a really good idea. There, you can see that too. Okay. Now I'm going to set these onto the background of the card. I'm using a square card, and I've just got a square piece of card just to put this onto. Now I'm not going to border this with, or I'm not going to matte and layer this onto another layer. Instead I'm going to use a marker. This is an alcohol marker pen. I just want to create a border around the outside. So I'm just going to run my marker along the edge. It just creates a little border. If I was using perhaps slightly smaller flags that were not going to be the whole width of the card, then I would perhaps use, I would have cut this layer smaller, and then I would have been able to matte and layer it. But as it is, I think this is just enough. Oh, now my glue's not working. Okay, if you bear with me a second, we should do this and then we'll go on to the embossing in a second. I've just noticed on there that Natasha said that the mandala sets will be available on Lisa's website soon. All new items that are released are exclusive initially to Create and Craft for 2 weeks, and then they are available on Lisa's website to purchase as well. So I'm losing track of the time actually, but it's not, I think it was nearly 2 weeks ago that these mandala sets came out on Create and Craft. And I know that Lisa is at the moment is preparing for her next show, which is on the 12th of June, I believe, which is the Christmas show, would you believe? I know, that time already. So what I'm going to do while I'm at it, my glue's working, I'm just going to pop these on here. So we'll put the centre one on first. Now hopefully I got them the right way around. Yes, I have. So I want to keep where I stamped across all the flags, all the banners. And I'm just going to separate those and have a little gap in between, but you can still see where I stamped the mandalas there. This one doesn't match. Not that that matters at all. I'm too busy chatting, that's what that was. But say, all we're doing is just creating the interest in the background. I think that just makes a really elegant background. Right, we'll leave those to dry and we'll go on to mandalas now. Okay, now, just for speed purposes, it's actually quite a quick card to demonstrate, but the time that you'll take in this is the time that you take to actually colour in your mandalas, and this is the bit that can take the, well, it can take as long or as little as you like. Actually, I quite enjoyed the fact that I could just sit down and just colour, and I've gone for the different colourway this time. Yellow and grey is one of my favourite colours, but this turquoisey colour works really well with the grey too. Now there's a couple of different ways of doing this. You can stamp out your mandalas onto a piece of card. Actually, let's just do that. You can see how well they stamp. So we can take your ink. If you're going to colour these with alcohol markers, and obviously you want to make sure you stamp these with either a hybrid ink that I'm using here, or what's the other one? It's not VersaFine. It's gone right out of my head. There's another type of ink that you can use and doesn't react with the alcohol markers. My mind has gone blank. Oh, Memento, that's the one. Sorry there. Or you can use a Memento ink if you're colouring with alcohol markers. This technique will work if you used a water-based, but I would just urge you to be careful when you're putting the embossing ink on. So you stamp this out, then you colour this in either with your alcohol markers or your water-based markers. If you're using water-based markers, I would allow them to dry really, really well before putting the clear embossing ink on. And when you're putting the ink on, I would say be really careful with water-based not to smudge the ink around like this. I just tap it up and down because you don't want to move the colour about too much. With the alcohol markers, then obviously that colour is going to stay put. Now you can either stamp out your mandala, colour it in, and before you cut it out you can then take your clear ink pad and you can dab your ink onto your piece like this, and then you cover it with embossing ink. That would be the only difference. I've already cut mine out because obviously you didn't want to sit and watch me cut these out, so it works in exactly the same way. I can either take my ink and push it quite firmly onto your design like this, or you can actually take your design and you can press it gently onto your ink pad like this. Basically what you want to do is just cover the whole surface with the clear ink. That will actually give the embossing powder something to catch on to. Now I've already got the ink on this paper here, so I'm just going to move that onto a clean piece of paper, and I'm going to take that off. Now while that ink is still wet, I shall sprinkle this with the clear embossing powder. Now we're going to be doing this a couple of times, so if you find a few gaps at this stage that you haven't that doesn't allow the embossing powder to catch, I wouldn't worry too much. Now I've left a little piece here that I haven't cut out just so as I can hold that with my tweezers, just so as I can start heating that. So hopefully we can see that the surface there is actually covered with embossing powder. So as I heat that, hopefully that's turning now. If I hold that like that, you can actually see that the whole of the surface is going shiny. Okay, what I would suggest is that you heat this until the whole thing is smooth, and you can actually see then where you perhaps need a bit more of a layer of powder. So I'm just going to heat that and heat that. Then while that is hot, I'm just going to sprinkle more embossing powder on that, and while the melted embossing powder is hot, that is actually what's going to act as your glue to allow more embossing powder to stick. Now my heat gun isn't too ferocious, so I'm able to heat it over the embossing powder on the paper there. You do need to be careful that you don't heat up your powder in your pad, but then I'm going to reheat this again, and hopefully you can see that turning. And this is giving a really smooth enamel look across the whole of the top of the mandala there. Now this will be very, very hot, so I would make sure that you don't touch the surface of this until it's fully cooled. It doesn't take too long to cool. Right, I just need a little bit more there, and just perhaps a little bit more on there. Now it's recommended you usually put about 3 layers on of embossing powder, and that gives you a really lovely super smooth glaze. And I mean, it's entirely up to you, and you gauge it as to the images and the paper that you're using, and even down to the way that your powder reacts as well. So you can, hopefully you can see there, as I hold that with the tweezers, that will be quite hot still. You can see that beautiful glaze on the top of that, and what it does actually do, it actually intensifies the colour. And that's actually really lovely. Hopefully you can see that. Oh yeah, you can see the glaze on there. Now what I will do, I shall do these other ones quickly so you can see them turn again, and I shall do these in exactly the same way. You can see there I've reused my bits of card. I've got other designs on the back there. Okay, so I shall do that, and I shall heat those. Now what is also quite a nice effect, once the embossing powder is hot, you can actually sprinkle bits of glitter in there as well. So that might actually be something that you'd like to, that you could try, or possibly even while that glaze is really hot, you could perhaps even sprinkle in a couple of the mermaid's tails over the top, just to add some sparkle. I don't know how that would react. I think it would probably work as long as you didn't reheat the mermaid's tails, but just allowed the wetness of the stickiness of the really hot embossing powder to act as a glue. I think that would work quite nice. Or actually, another thing is perhaps add a sprinkle of fine glitter. I know Lisa has some really fine glitter. She's got some white and some black glitter. So if you could sprinkle that in onto the top of the this hot glaze as well, that would look stunning. So I'm trying to do this so you can actually see what I'm doing. Bear with me. I'll just heat that up a little bit. So what you need to do, you need to heat this up, this glaze, and you can dip it in the embossing powder and it picks up a little bit more, and then you can heat that again. Hopefully you can see that. I always find it still quite fascinating to watch. It's one of those things. And the more powder that you add, you don't want that to go like that. There we are. Actually, that's worth showing you because I've dropped that upside down. I've just got a slight dink in the top of the embossing powder there, but all you need to do just to smooth it out is just to reheat that, and it sort of has a self-leveling effect. There we are. So I'm going to pick this one up again. This does work if you heat it onto like a glass mat. It just takes a little bit longer. And if you're using a good quality card, it doesn't actually curl up at the ends too much. So I should get this one done as well. You'll find that the first layer that you put on is usually a little bit pitted and perhaps a little bit uneven. So I wouldn't worry about that, because by going in with the second layer there and going straight in with the heat gun, that really does smooth out quite nicely. You see that layer is an awful lot more smoother, and I think I only need 2 layers on that one. And let's put this somewhere. I'm not going to spill it. won't take too long to cool down at all. So I'm just going to cut out my scissors. Finished cutting around the edge here. I did leave this little area on here just so as I could hold it with my tweezers. And cutting through the embossing ink, or the embossing powder once it's set is no issue at all. Again, as you can see there, it cuts through. So we've got a really nice, smooth, glazed mandala there. Now I shall use a couple of foam pads just to add this onto the hair because I like that little bit of dimension. And I found actually with this first one I've done, some of the smaller ones, they did curl up just slightly, but I actually quite like that. That looked quite effective. On the card there. Now I'm doing these as sets of 3 because what I had in mind was the June challenge that we have running on our Crafting with Lisa Horton group, and it was my turn to set the challenge this month. So, and I said that the part of the giveaway or the prize for the winner of the challenge would be the creations from each of my lives. So these would be perfect candidates for the challenge because I've obviously used 3 banners and I've got the 3 mandalas there. Right, now it comes to the sentiment. I've already pre-stamped this, but what I'll show you the sentiments again. We have the just saying the bold words, and I've used the birthday sentiment from here. We do have happy, we have birthday, we have smile, love, hello, special for you. So as possibilities are endless that you can use these for. I like to have sentiments that have sort of mixed styles in them where the 2 words are different. So what I've done, I stamped the birthday from the bold words, and I used VersaFine for this because I really wanted the boldness of the black, and I know that this VersaFine always gives me a lovely crisp image. So I'll just stamp this out for you and you can see how well these stamp. As with all of Lisa's stamps, they're fantastic quality. They won't let you down, but they stamp so well. We'll just let that stick. So you can see there how bold that is. Say because of the boldness of the line there, that makes that really, really easy to stamp out. Now to finish the sentiment, I also mentioned that I used the ticker phrases. And what I've done, I took the happy birthday, let's remove that from there. Now, I think I mentioned, didn't I, that Lisa has a show coming up on the 12th of June, a Christmas show, and I think, I might be wrong, it might be on a different day, but there may be more ticker phrases coming then. If it's not on the 12th of June, I know they're coming very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for those. Now I've only stamped half of that stamp purely because I don't want the happy, it's just the I don't want the birthday, it's just the happy that I wanted to use, so there's no point wasting ink and stamping the whole lot. What I wanted to do is take the happy, and I'm actually splitting, I'm actually cutting halfway through that design there. This is what I like to do. I do like to mix and match lots of different sets together and lots of different, sort of even down to stamps within the sentiment. It just gives you that versatility. And makes your card look unique as well, because if everybody sort of mixed and matched in that way, there's going to be endless possibilities of the different designs, and we always like to make something a little bit different for ourselves, don't we? So we just put the happy there, and then we can go in and attach our birthday. There we are. So quite a simple card for me today. As I say, no inking or blending or anything involved, but I think it's just a really nice effect, and it's just nice to show you sort of techniques sometimes. Just nice to show you different techniques and different ways to get the most out of your inks and your stash. And it's amazing how much you can do with just a clear embossing pad. It's, you know, I think it makes it really versatile, and I think that's a really nice sort of elegant, a clean and simple card. And it's a lovely way to show off the mandalas as well. And I really enjoyed sitting down colouring these. If you noticed, I've actually coloured them all slightly differently. You could have also stacked these up onto one another also, and even added the larger one to actually create sort of a stack of 3 or possibly 4 mandalas. So that would have been a lovely design too. Hope you enjoyed those. I hope you perhaps give them a try, and we'll perhaps see some of your entries into the June challenge. So take care everyone. See you again next week.